It's your call, though. Just all seriousness, we said this yesterday at an event, and we need to repeat it. We're taking the coronavirus situation very seriously. There's a disturbing case in California where they can't figure out how it happened. So far, we have no confirmed cases in New Jersey. That is still the case. But we're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. So we have no choice but to do that. Again, if you have a question about this, 1-800-222-1222, 1-800-222-1222, or nj.gov/health, nj.gov/health. Lamont, in coordination with superintendents all over the state, has been communicating aggressively. I know Dan is going to have a blast going out to parents sometime in the next couple of days. If we over-communicate on this, please forgive us. Because there's a lot of unknowns out there, and I think the more that we all have a sense of where to go to get factual answers, et cetera, the better. Again, my late mother in heaven would want me to remind you the best things we can do. Wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds religiously. If you cough, cough into your arm or sneeze into your arm and not into your hand. And if you don't feel well, and particularly if you've got a fever, don't go to school. I don't want that every kid in the state to take this as a get out of school pass, but if you're legitimately not well, don't go to school and don't go to work. And so please adhere to the basics. They may seem mundane, they may seem sort of apple pie, but that's the best thing we could do. That's the same thing you do with influenza generally, right? So every year there's a deadly influenza in our midst, and that's what we need to do to keep it at bay. There's no vaccine yet. You heard last night from the White House that they're working on it, but that's probably a year at the fastest away, so we got to get through this season at least. I'm honored to have an extraordinary health professional at the top of our task force, Judy Persicelli, who is our health commissioner, the first nurse ever to hold that title, which is a big deal. And Lamont Repillette, who we'll hear from in a minute, has been working very closely with her. It's a whole of government approach. Newark Liberty Airport's one of the 11 funneling airports in America, so that's another reason why the Port Authority is involved, and Customs and Border Patrol, and the CDC is present. So we're doing everything we can to get out ahead of this, and God forbid if we get hit with it, to prepare as best we can for it. But I can't say that enough. So thank you for letting me get that off my chest. Again, I'm honored to be here at Bound Brook High, the home of the Crusaders. Any Crusaders out here, kids? Yes? Let's go. Let's go. Having a good basketball season?
We have a great basketball.
All right, let's hear it for the Crusaders hoops teams. All right.
We're in the state tournaments. Monday night, both teams will be playing in Bound Brook High School.
Girls and boys?
Girls and boys.
Oh man, now come on.
And girls probably could beat the boys.
All right. That sounds like a gauntlet has been dropped here. The mayor has put it on the line here. Okay, so go Crusaders. I don't want to upset whoever other town is that you're playing, so please, my ignorance is not only bliss, but I'll have plausible deniability. Thank you again, Superintendent Dr. Dan Gallagher, for your welcome so graciously and introduction. Honored, in addition to be standing with you, honored to be standing with the guy to my left, the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Lamont Repillette, and the guy immediately to my right, Bound Brook Mayor Bob Faison. So, and Mayor, before I get started, we spoke about this a little bit in the ante room, and you and I were on the phone a few weeks ago. I want to say that everyone here stands with Bound Brook as the borough's downtown continues to heal from that devastating fire. We're going to drive by there on the way out of town and see it with our own eyes, but we also know that the downtown is still open, and it's open for business. So I encourage everyone to show your support by shopping local and helping to keep this community strong and ready to rebuild its future, all right? We got some leaders. I'll leave some out, but some leaders in labor with us today. I also want to acknowledge Bound Brook Education Association, led by President Lauren Paxton. Lauren, great to be with you. AFT President Donna Chiara. Donna, great to have you with us. Barry Kushner, who is as good a friend in labor as we have anywhere in the state. Barry, it's always an honor to be with you. Chief Bett is with us in the back. Chief, bless you. And I thank Lauren, to you and Donna and everyone else in the educator community, to the dedicated educators and educational support professionals here in Bound Brook and around the state. You continue every day to make the state the national leader in public education. So hats off to you. Melanie Morano is with us, Freeholder. God bless you. Great to see you with us as well. So 2 days ago, I presented our proposed budget for the next fiscal year. It's a budget that aims to continue our progress in making our state stronger and fairer and changing the culture in Trenton from one that had for far too long overlooked, or rather looked out for the insiders, to a culture that looks out for New Jersey's middle-class families. There is perhaps no better example of this culture change than in the way that we have focused on reinvesting in our public schools. And there is no better proof that our path is the right one than the fact that today, and as of a few months ago, at long last, New Jersey's public schools are ranked as the #1 public school system in America. While I don't think I need to revisit the recent past, I will anyway. In the 8 years before our administration took office, our schools were cumulatively underfunded by roughly $9 billion. Over the first 2 years of our administration, so not including the budget I announced on Tuesday, our goal has been to pull public education out of this deep hole. And as I mentioned, we're making real progress. In our first 2 years, we restored more than $500 million in direct aid to our public schools. And in the budget that I proposed on Tuesday, which is our third budget, in the upcoming year, we're going to put another approximately $400 million, actually well over $400 million, back in our classrooms, all the way from pre-K up through grade 12. Not to mention what we're doing in higher education. We had a big event yesterday up at William Patterson University talking about the Garden State Guarantee, which is another big slug of money directed explicitly at young folks, or folks of frankly any age, who want to go to college, in this case 4-year college, but just can't afford it, aren't accessible. This is to get them to a place that they dream to get to, but have heretofore not been able to. Across our state, back to the pre-K to 12, across our state, hundreds of school districts that have been left behind and whose students, educators, and taxpayers bore the brunt of years of aid cuts and flat funding are finally getting some real relief. And that's why we're here today, and no one knows this better than Dan. Bound Brook was one of those afterthought districts. Under our first 2 budgets, Bound Brook has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of our strategy of reinvestment in our schools. And today I am proud that we're going to make it 3 in a row. Today is the day that under state law, the Department of Education, under this gentleman's leadership, releases projected aid figures for the upcoming school year. And in these numbers, Bound Brook will see another 18% increase in formula aid, some $2.8 million in new aid, K through 12. In addition to more than $350,000 more increase for its pre-K program. This means that since our administration took office, we have increased state aid for Bound Brook's K through 12 classrooms by 124%, and pre-K assistance will roughly double what it was when we started our work. But increasing school aid isn't just good news for students or educators or educational support professionals, which it is, for the administration and the staff, absolutely, or for the Board of Education, and whose members I acknowledge, who set the school budget. This is good news for everyone, because every dollar of new school aid from the state is direct property tax relief. Here in Bound Brook, because of our reinvestment in the school district, average school property taxes borough-wide are actually lower than they were 2 years ago. More school aid helps make our communities more affordable, and strong public schools protect the investments residents have made in their homes and in their communities. And that's a point worth underlining. When you've got extraordinary public schools, as we do in the state, across literally hundreds of districts, that's a magnet for folks to come in and buy a home, or if they've already got a home, to protect the value of their home. You see that in particular in pre-K districts, because you see folks saying, listen, for young families, this is a home run to be able to get access to the full pre-K services for a 3 or 4-year-old in the state is a game changer, and you all know that. This is what, in this particular community's sake, this is what makes our investment in Bound Brook and in every school community like it so important. That's why bringing districts that were unilaterally and systematically defunded and underfunded by the prior administration, like Bound Brook, back to fair formula funding is so important. Look, we are not here to spike I was going to say football season. I think you had a good football season as well. Yeah. So I'm not here to spike any footballs, and I know you did enough of that. You got to the state playoffs, as I recall, as well, right? So hats off to you for that as well. We know we're not there yet. We know we have more work to do, and we have much more work to make up for, given the reality of what we inherited. But we're on a journey. It's going in the right direction, and it is making a difference. There are many, many more districts like Bound Brook across our state. They are great communities with great families and great educators and great schools. For years, they were an afterthought, but today they are our first thought. So thank you all for being here. Before I introduce Lamont, I have to say two things. One is she was already acknowledged, but I want to acknowledge the First Lady of the great state of New Jersey, Tammy Murphy. And secondly, my son Charlie would want me to tell, as Lamont always wants me to do when we're in libraries, to tell my favorite library joke. So this kid walks up to the librarian and says, "I'd like a quarter pounder with cheese, a large Coke, and a large fries." And the librarian reaches across and says, "Young man, this is a library." And he said, "Oh, sorry, I'd like a quarter pounder with cheese, a large Coke, and a large fries." That's as funny as it's going to get today. So with that, please allow me to introduce a star, a guy who I met many, many years ago at this point when he was superintendent in Asbury Park. He's got a lot of roots around this part of the state. Please help me welcome the Commissioner of the Department of Education, Dr. Lamont Repillette.
Let's give another round of applause to Governor Murphy. Because as a superintendent, Dan can attest, today is one of those days where you anxiously anticipate the numbers coming in from the Department of Education. But someone now on this end and a part of Murphy's administration, I'm proud to be able to call out to my colleagues and say we've had historic investments in education. So today is a great day for us. So I want to thank you, Governor Murphy, honestly, because there's a lot of superintendents out there that's saying thank you very much for your investment in education.
Thank you, man.
It's great to be here this morning with the governor, Mayor Faison. We got Freeholder Morano. We have the First Lady, Tammy Murphy. We have Superintendent, my buddy Dan Gallagher, Principal Smith, parents, and of course the students. As Governor Murphy said, recent changes in the school funding formula have enabled districts like Bound Brook to receive long-awaited increases in state aid. The governor has already mentioned some of these numbers, but they bear for me to repeat. Next year, Bound Brook will receive an increase of 18% in K-12 aid, nearly $3 million more than the current year. I say that nearly $3 million in the current year. And Dan understands how important that is when you're investing in programs and, more importantly, investing in our students and their well-being. Additionally, the governor's budget includes $1.4 in preschool additional aid for Bound Brook, representing 99% increase in state support for the district's preschool program over the last 2 years, 99%. So as the governor said, our earliest of learners have an opportunity now not just to come but get more quality instruction as a result of this investment. In total, Governor Murphy's proposed budget, increases preschool aid by $83 million statewide, demonstrating this administration's continued commitment to the advancement of preschool program with $25 additional million new monies going to districts. In fact, over the past 3 years, we have increased preschool education aid by almost $210 million, more than doubling the increase of the previous 9 years combined. Let me repeat that. $210 million more than doubling the increase of the previous 9 years combined. Overall, this budget includes an increase of nearly $900 million in K-12 Formula 8 to school districts since the 2017-2018 school year, representing the largest commitment in the history of the state of New Jersey. These additional resources will create a stronger and fairer school funding formula and structure, and in turn, a stronger and fairer New Jersey. Next year alone, the governor's proposed budget across the state will increase a total of $336 million in K-12 state aid. So now you're seeing a more balanced approach to school aid. We removed the arbitrary caps on aid, increases to ensure schools have the resources they need to provide all of New Jersey students with a high-quality education that will enable them to achieve post-secondary success. It is our priority at the Department of Education to ensure our schools are receiving the support they need to advance academic excellence for all students. As a former superintendent, I can attest to the importance of equitable state aid. When it comes to school funding, it's imperative, our moral imperative, that we get it right. The future of New Jersey's 1.4 million students depend on our investment in education, and that is why in the beginning I said thank you, Governor Murphy, because it's in our moral imperative. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Thank you, Lamont. And thanks for your great leadership of the Department of Education. Again, it's we wear as a badge of honor, probably the #1 badge of honor we wear as the #1 public education system in the United States of America under your leadership. So thank you. I mentioned the fire some number of weeks ago. We've also, both in tragedy and in triumph, this is a quintessential New Jersey community. So let's welcome the leader of Bound Brook, its mayor, a really good guy and a great leader. Please help me welcome Mayor Bob Faison.
Well, thank you everyone for coming, and including the media. After the fire, I think I was doing 10 interviews a day talking about our recovery, but I just want to say something about being the mayor of Bound Brook. Bound Brook is blessed. And I'm just going to go through a few of the things that have happened in the past couple of decades in Bound Brook. You're all aware of the flooding that has taken place in Bound Brook in the past. But we're blessed, and thanks to the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the federal government funding, New Jersey state funding, and the county funding, we have levees all around Bound Brook now, and we are flood-free. We are blessed that the President of the United States created the Opportunity Zone program, and Governor Murphy designated almost exclusively all of Bound Brook as an opportunity zone, and it is helping tremendously with our development. And we were blessed after Sunday, January 12th fire. We had, I thank the mayors from 20 municipalities and 3 counties, 31 fire departments, 14 rescue squads, and 11 police departments all came to the help of Bound Brook and saved this town from what would have absolutely been a devastating fire to much more of the community. And I can't thank them enough. And we are once again blessed by the governor, New Jersey Transit, and for the resumption of the one-seat ride on the Raritan Valley line. We had a meeting last night with 15 mayors, representatives of the governor's office, New Jersey Transit, and we talked about increasing that one-seat ride to New York City in the future for both prime time and peak hours. But the governor has been tremendous help in making sure that it is done fairly, like school funding, for the borough of Bound Brook. And finally, we are blessed by the governor's presence here today with this school aid. It's just a phenomenal amount of money that makes school aid distribution a heck of a lot fairer than it was, and I can't thank you enough. And on behalf of the residents of Bound Brook, we have a silver coin that we give to those who have been of tremendous help to Bound Brook. And on behalf of the residents of Bound Brook, and to enhance the history, tradition, and patriotism of Bound Brook, I present the coin to the governor.
Look at you, Bob. Thank you so much. Wow. It's the real deal.
Thank you very much.
You know, in the Olympics, when I go like this to prove that it's real. Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you for your leadership and your very gracious and kind words and you don't hear bless and NJ Transit in the same sentence often. So I was particularly struck by that. So thank you, and thanks, Dan, to you. And
I do want to say one.
Yeah, please.
I put it in my notes. And I do, I think all of us here pray for the governor in his upcoming surgery on
bless
Thursday.
you. Thank you, man. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Bob. There's been a huge outpouring of support, so that means more than you know, and I really appreciate it. We'll take a couple of questions from the press, please.
Governor, the school funding formula has been criticized for not being very transparent. Does your administration plan to release the SFRI targets for each district along with the aid that they're getting?
I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes,
Come on. That's happening, I think, literally
yes,
as we
we're
stand
releasing
here.
the aid, but I think you're talking about the formula. It is proprietary, so it's one of those things
the
we're working with
formula.
Treasury. So
Apologize.
that's something that we're actually working with to see what we can, but right now we cannot release the actual statistical data.
So, but the targets in terms of what each district it would take to get them to full funding,
That information is available to the school districts when they receive their information.
you're not making that public?
No, we're making it public. As we speak right now, it's being uploaded to districts throughout the state. That's per statute.
So, but a couple of sort of broader points here. You should expect to see ballpark around the same results that we've had for the past couple of years with a lot more dollars, meaning the increases in the flat districts are going to be about twice as much as the folks who are going to suffer any diminution from last year. Secondly, and as importantly, as you may have heard in the budget address we made, we're being much more aggressive on the districts that have been squeezed in terms of establishing a $50 million stabilization category or account. Details on that will be forthcoming as Lamont works through exactly how that will work. But that's a very meaningful amount of money, in addition to the formula aid of $336 million, in addition to that, the $83 million statewide into pre-K, which I think Lamont's expecting to extend to another 30 districts and thousands of more kids. So there's a lot of moving parts, and most of them are really good. Brenda, I apologize. If I went by your hand, I'm sorry.
So districts who are losing money, for example, like Tom's River under S2, and have had to lay off teachers in order to meet their budget requirements, can they then anticipate more aid, more emergency aid because of this extra?
The answer is yes. I can't speak to Tom's River. I mean, I hear from Tom's River parents and educators all the time, and I have enormous sympathy with what they're going through. They are emblematic of a bunch of communities. Again, far more in the minority than the majority. Most districts are like Bound Brook are going up, but this is a much more significant statement in terms of financial support. They have to go through a process, as you won't be surprised by, so I don't want to preempt what that process looks like, or I assume they'll want to participate in it. I can't speak for Tom's River, but they are a great example of the sort of district that we want to help them manage their way through this. Remember, folks, that I mentioned only one part of the reality we inherited. The last administration had underfunded the school funding formula by cumulatively $9 billion. I think Bound Brook's numbers are well over doubled from the state over the past number of years, and Dan can correct me. 8 something up to now, I think it's around 18 and change $1 million. So the transformation in a community like this is jaw-dropping. But Brenda's question runs to the second point, which I didn't mention, was the formula really wasn't allowed to work. So you had 10 years of a frozen demographic in the state. And so the money is intended to follow the students and to follow the growth of population, and it wasn't allowed to. So S2, which is the Senate bills, which was championed by Senate President Steve Sweeney, which we support, as did the Speaker, we're in year 3, I guess, now. Right? We're taking some incomings over here. I hope everybody get to your posts. We're now in year 3 of that 7-year period, and certain districts, because of the demographic shifts that which were ignored for 10 years, are suffering, and we want to be there in a meaningful financial way to help them through that period. I gave you a longer answer than you wanted. Anybody else? One more?
The Super train is probably on its way at this stage of the game.
And you'll note that I'm not on it.
No, but I know a couple of reporters who are.
Yeah.
And the question,
I know you're not on it, Brennan.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
the question is the reforms that have been enacted, both by the state and the chamber.
Yeah.
In terms of this trip, and I'd like
I don't want to speak for the chamber. I think just eliminating hard alcohol is not necessarily the end zone, if you will, for what they need to do. We thought about this long and hard. I am going down there, but the only event I'm going to do is the speech that the governor gives. I'm not on that train. Tammy and I are taking a separate train, and I'll make the address because there are 500 people in that hall. Our federal delegation will be there in almost entirety. That's an important point to marry our federal presence with our state presence with the business community. So I don't want to miss that. As a state matter, we've put a lot of, steps forward. A big sexual harassment legislative priority, which I unveiled a couple of weeks ago, which I'm very happy and honored that Loretta Weinberg is going to be one of the sponsors of. We are in the process right now of going through the hiring process of a world-class firm that can come in and give state government advice on training in particular, workplace conditions. We've done those are two more recent steps. I don't think we're in the end zone either. I don't want to rest until we have a state that stands at the head of the class in terms of equity, workplace conditions, treatment. I've said any other campaign that I'm ever involved with, I want to set the standard. So I can't speak for the chamber. I hope they're doing more than just cutting out hard alcohol. I say that as a Murphy, by the way. And I'd say lastly, we're down, this is not your question, but I want to actually say this because it relates to another set of questions which we get rightfully asked all the time, and that's transportation and NJ Transit. We're packing, in addition to doing the speech tonight, we've got a number of important meetings in Washington that are mission critical to us. We have a meeting with our delegation, both the House and Senate, later on this afternoon. Tomorrow, my colleagues will be meeting with the Department of Transportation to talk about Gateway. We will then have a high-level meeting at the White House to talk about a number of issues, Gateway being at the top of that list. So transportation infrastructure, and Barry lives this and knows this, is our lifeblood in many respects. So we're going to take the opportunity of being down there for 24 hours to lay in heavily on that front. I want to thank you, Bob, as the mayor of this great community, Dan as the super, Lamont as our commissioner, to our educators, to our administrators, our elected officials, most importantly to the kids in this great town. Good luck in both the boys and the girls team. Go Crusaders, and thank you all so much for having us.